Hi everyone, my name's PK, and here today I am interviewing or speaking with Dave, who I think is a friend and client. Well, he's definitely a client. And Dave's got two deals actually that he's bought. So just for those who don't know, you don't need to be in Australia to buy in Australia. You know, I talk so much about the fact that you don't need a buyer's agent to, buy interstate or in a different city or town. Dave lives in Colorado, beautiful Denver in the US. He's an expat. Um, and he's bought two properties in Australia, actually in WA, completely remotely. It's been a bit of a journey with finances and things like that, but he's got over it. So I'm just doing like a sort of quick video with Dave right now, where you can kind of see how he executed that, how he got these properties, which are really already growing, aren't really costing him anything to hold. I think they're neutral to positive. I can't remember the numbers off my top of my head, but I'll ask Dave for them. So yeah, stick around. If you are looking to buy in where you're not living, if you want to buy a high performance property, and if you don't want to use a buyer's agent, you're actually passionate about property, which is important if you want to create a passive income from property. So yeah, without too much fluff, let's get into it. First of all, Dave, I know we've already been chatting for 45 minutes, so this is a bit awkward, but congratulations on the actual deal or deals.
Thank you so much. Yeah, appreciate it.
Awesome. So maybe we just start from the start and share with folks, and there's probably, I don't know, maybe 10,000 people that will view this across my Facebook group, YouTube, all that kind of thing. Like, you were already a property investor. You already had, I think, three or four properties,
Yeah.
four properties in Australia. So like, you knew how this worked. You had bought properties before. Why on earth did you part with so much cash and buy
Really
or
good
invest in
question.
the property investment accelerator?
Yeah, well, it is a really good question because so I bought before and but all of the properties in Queensland, all in areas that I knew based on near my wife's family, and so I was like, oh, okay, I know there's some nice restaurants there, or it's near the beach. Well, it's like everything's near the beach there, right? So it was a little. I think what I'd realized is that it had been a little bit hit and hope with my approach to investing. So there across the four properties which I'd managed to build up, there really hadn't been any kind of really hardcore data research or much thought beyond anything beyond okay, well, this one's like it's a nice size, or it's a quiet street, or um, it's sort of 3 stops from the CBD in Brisbane, and it's near a train station, and some of the basics. And but what I'd really learned is that some had out of the four, one had gone up really well, one had done okay, and two were pretty stagnant. And I just realized, you know what, I think obviously if I'd have only invested the two that were pretty stagnant, if I'd have only invested in somewhere that was going to generate more growth, then I'd be in a much better position. And that's where I'd got to the point where the equity had grown enough in that property that was doing well, ready to buy again. But I really wanted to be a little bit more informed. So I started looking around, and I found your site, and we had a free call to check in and see if it would be right. And it just, there was something that I just really felt like, hey, I can trust this guy. Like, he knows what he's talking about. This isn't fluff, because you see a lot of sales stuff out there, and a lot of people out there. I just didn't have that good feeling about, and I just really liked the approach and thought, you know what, like this seems to be a very, very worthwhile investment. It's going to make me a much more informed buyer.
Yeah, good one. Thanks for sharing. And maybe if we, with your permission, if we kind of just deep dive on one of the properties that you already had. I think from memory it was in Albion. For those who don't
Mm-hmm.
know, Albion's like maybe 4 or 5 kilometers from Brisbane CBD. if you're in Melbourne, think of it's not a perfect analogy, but think of like a Middle Park or something like that. In Sydney, think of somewhere like not as far north as Epping, but just beyond Lane Cove or something like that. Um, and you bought this property, blue chip asset, you paid good money for it. um, it's been costing a lot in terms of maintenance and things like that, which is fine if you buy something that expensive. But the key thing that I want to hit home, and keen to get your thoughts as well, Dave, just because you buy a blue chip asset, like Dave mentioned, that is close to a CBD in affordable Brisbane, next to the train station, everyone on that street is on six-figure salaries, incomes are good, there's no Holden Commodores parked outside, they're Audis or at least nicer Toyotas, all that kind of thing. That doesn't mean that you get the capital growth. None of those things, leafy streets or the nice cafe in the corner, or the fact that you can you can go for a walk with your partner after dark. None of those things actually guarantee capital growth. So it's easy for me to say stuff like that, but what was your experience, Dave? Like, you've got blue chip assets, blue chip, quote unquote. Actually, they're not bad. But yeah, like why did you go away from that blue chip strategy? Maybe if you want to share your experience of Albion.
So I guess, I mean, Albion is the one that it hasn't, I would say it's probably the second best out of the four. And it was interesting because I was still in this, mindset. I felt that it was actually, until we spoke, I still felt that it was quite a solid investment. It's still okay. Like it's done all right. And I think I've definitely, I've done as well as I might have expected to with my hidden home strategy. But I guess it was just that, there was something you said in that welcome call, or the call that we had just to see things, how we would feel about working together, about just what you're leaving on the table. And I just felt, wow, like, I'd always thought, yeah, there's things I could do with this property, and I was ready to increase it, extend the deck, and it's a Queenslander, so I'd raise it and build underneath. And then, I was thinking, well, actually, we talked a little bit about some of your criteria, and I was like, yeah, well, actually, well, you know what? It's already flooded once since since I had
in the flood zone.
In the flood zone, and I didn't look at any of that sort of stuff. And so I just decided, well, look, these ones are, just the cost of selling and reusing the money for other investments, just it didn't really make sense. I do think it's a sensible strategy to hold these ones, but with the additional equity, I just felt, it's really time to start using a new approach and really try to educate myself and get to the point where I could just make much more informed decisions.
Yeah, cool.
And it's funny, like just as we're talking, I just got an email flip up on my phone from my agent, my property manager, saying maintenance request for Albion.
Those are the worst emails. I mean, for everyone that's listening, we always kind of budget for 1,000, maybe 1,500 a year, but not like 10 or 12 maintenance requests. They're the worst pop-ups you can get. The ugly side of property investing, I can tell you. All right, and kind of skip ahead, I would say a year, actually, for those, there are clients that buy, I think the record is 2 weeks from starting the course. This is probably on the other side of that spectrum. It's been a year, but obviously things have happened, which are fine. But skip ahead a year from that initial phone call. You've bought 2 properties in WA. Do you want to, why did you choose that particular part of WA? What was your experience in terms of buying without having to look at it personally, catching a flight? Just what are the numbers on the deals? If you could just share some of those, if you're comfortable.
Yeah, for sure. And so I think the reason, looking back on it now, I can't believe a year's gone by. It's crazy. And I think that's my life lesson, is that it's really taught me that I think where there's, when opportunity's there, you just got to go for it. And I really needed to prioritize it. But I got to say, I went through your course, and I was typing everything out as you were going. I think I've captured I've like almost got like a book of notes. And I think I sort of took that, like, don't leave anything on the table to the absolute max, to the extreme. And I was like, okay, I don't want to do any single thing that's against what you're recommending in the course. And so I think I probably went into a bit sort of maximizer overdrive, and I really needed to. So I think that's one of the things that's taken the time. I really needed to just get more sort of like activator and get stuck in. But I'd started doing all of the research early, and I set up, it's almost like this mission control of, like, you know, suburb maps and
which, by
and
the way, if you're watching, you don't need to do, but you are welcome to do if you want to.
Well, in the end, I ripped it all down because I was just like, you know what, like I'm going into this too hardcore. So I just I followed your system. I identified some clusters of suburbs, and there was 3 areas. So it was in an area in WA where there was a cluster. There's a cluster in Adelaide and a cluster in Perth that really met my criteria. So I was looking for that, you know, the right yield and the, you know, just everything in relation to the median value. Everything I was trying to get just right. And being in Colorado, and, you know, end of the work day and family time, having to hop on calls with agents and start schmoozing, and it was really tough. And, you know, as we've discussed before, I think, you know, if I'd have really jumped into the Perth market, I think, you know, I would have got some more killer deals. If I'd have just jumped straight in, and whoever managed to get it done in 2 weeks, I'll take my hat off to you. But so well done there. But I ended up getting a few hits and building up. I did actually really enjoy building the relationships with the agents. That bit was really, really key. But it's tough, because especially being, you know, and I get it, you know, for those thinking, you know, I'm interstate, or I'm not going to see the properties, or, you know, how am I going to get in there? Like, you got to do some grafting, and you've got to build the relationships. You've got to get on the phone. There's no alternative. But what I found was that, you know, you can really build some relationships quickly, and you really get that feeling, you know, the more you speak to them. And there was some agents I was like, this isn't going to go anywhere. They're just like, they don't care. They just want to, you know, whoever's going to be there and buy and get it across the line. But I just, you know, I latched onto this one guy that really got a good connection with. And I thought like my sweet spot was going to be that I really wanted to have a tenant in there already. I wasn't buying to live in it. I just wanted to get it done. And there were a lot of folks that were looking in the area to buy to move in versus investing. And so this one property popped up in a suburb in WA, which from all the data points was looking at being, you know, right at the bottom of its growth cycle. And then and the price point was I think it was $499 that was advertised for. I tried every tip and trick that you gave me, and that one ended up, I got it down to $490, so not like huge amount. I wasn't in an area it was a tough one to be able to really undercut. The advantage there was, you know, they weren't doing open houses. It was appointments only, and the guy was like, look, this has come up, you got to move. And this was the other real learning point. It's about being like very like committing early, getting stuck in, because if you and ah about it, it's gone. And then all that work, it's like, you know, you might have to do all of the rework. And so that one ended up being really straightforward. And I'd followed a lot of the points that you'd said, and I'd never thought about going lower than 20% before, because why would I pay like mortgage lenders insurance and what a waste of money. And you know, so I've thought so much more about like how I can leverage my equity better. And once it was locked in, you know, the experience of not actually looking at the house and having a property manager look at it for me and feedback, and doing the property, and you're getting all the building and pest inspection done, and the property manager sorted. It was really like, you know, the info from you makes it very, very much paint by numbers. I've been going back and forth to Australia for years. I've never been to Perth. I don't know when I'll make it to Perth, but I felt very confident to just say, you know what, maybe I might never see this house, but I'm just going to go for it. And
Yeah.
and it all went through like clockwork for that first one.
For that first one.
Yeah.
And what's the anticipated yield, or what's the rent per week that you might get on that one?
So that one is going to be for the moment it's going to be 470. So I think that's like it's like 4.98 something. It's just about 5% yield on that one. So
Yeah. And so just for some context, guys, if you're looking to buy, and you know this, Dave, if you're looking to buy a $500,000 property, there is basically nowhere in Sydney, Melbourne, or Brisbane that you can get a 4.9% or 5% yield. There just isn't. And so here's the thing: like people think that you need to buy Sydney, Melbourne, or Sydney, Melbourne, Brisbane to grow a portfolio, but to buy a 500K property in Sydney, Melbourne just really isn't possible. And to buy one in Brisbane, you're looking now at like high threes or 4% yield. And what that's going to mean is pretty big negative gearing, which means that the bank will basically cap you out for any future property purchases or make it much harder. So, if you want to grow a portfolio, much like what Dave has done, is doing, and will do, you really need to chase those yields. And that's what's great. I think, Dave, correct me if I'm wrong, but that's what's great about that deal is, it's not really costing you anything to hold. And it's already going up. And, without growth,
yeah.
what's the point of yield? You know what I mean?
Exactly. And I think like because the numbers on it have just been released, because I think it's about 2 or 3 months. They don't show the numbers on the websites of what it was sold for, and what the value is. And I know, obviously there's a way you teach on a course on how to value the properties, but I think it's looking at it, I think it's probably that one's probably already done 25 to 30 in equity growth since I closed that one in March.
In March.
So
Yeah.
I'm
So
pretty.
recording this in June. So April, May, June, 3 months, 25K. Yeah. All right.
So I'm feeling pretty good about that one. Yeah.
Yeah. Nice one. All right. And I think one of the other questions that I wanted to ask you is, everyone sort of focuses on the where should we buy, where should we buy, where should we buy type of questions. As you know from the course, that is really almost the easy bit. The data leads you to where should you buy. That's not actually that difficult once you know how to read the data, where to get it from, how to interpret it. Um, what would be your piece of advice, Dave, for people who are thinking, all right, well, I just need to know where to buy, and the how to buy will take care of itself, or the financing will take care of itself. Property investing is much of a finance game, a lending game, as it is, a property selection game. You've been through the trenches now in terms of getting finance, and, as an expat, it was a little bit more difficult. What's some piece of advice that you can maybe give to other expats or just other people dealing with banks or dealing with trying to get a loan in a hard situation?
Yeah, I guess the thing that was really tough, this second one that I'm just is actually just settling on next week, and this one has been a really big learning curve, and it's really made me realize, wow, like the how is to get things done is the real meaty bit, and that's where I think the education from the course has really come in. Plus, of course, like just I think honestly having you there to be able to ping and say, hey, like, can I just re-clarify this one, or this is the situation, and I had a couple of unique situations where during this second purchase, and my contact at the bank disappeared. I'd escalated, and his manager disappeared, and I was just like, oh my god, if I don't, I pinged you really late one night my time. I was like, PK, like this deal's over, because I'm not getting the contact I need. And just for context, this because of my situation, having an existing portfolio, I was really tied to using my existing bank to be able to get any kind of servicing, because they could see my history. And So there was no option to use a mortgage broker to help me. So I've really been doing all the hard yards, all like 200 plus documents that I've been, sending through to get this across the line, and the back and forth, and just how important it is to be educated about, the impact of, even things like, I mean, we know like credit cards impact your servicing ability, but to the point where I was like, oh, actually, I've just actually cancelled both of my credit cards. I don't have credit cards for the first time in 25 years. It's actually a really good feeling. But just dealing with the banks themselves, I've actually learned a lot more than I would have done by just outsourcing it to the mortgage broker as well, in terms of how it all works. And I did have the one hiccup where I thought it was going to go from being, just as straightforward as the first property. Lending requirements changed during the process, which made my serviceability lower, which meant I had to put in more money, and there was a lot more back and forth on that. And really, to get it, I was literally at the point where I was like going to the agent saying, you know what, if you can't get another $5,000 off the agreed price, I think I can't do it. They're ready to walk away. I don't want to lose a deal. I've just got to get this last one across the line. So there's a lot to it, and it's not just being like, okay, that looks great. I mean, it's not like going to buy like a cappuccino, right? And I know nobody listeners think it would ever think that, but it's involved, and I think there's various ways I think you can go about the how. But it all comes down to, I think, optimizing like what you're going to leave on the table. And I think one of the things that really stood out for me, particularly in when you talk about negotiating, and is obviously it's a hot market, and some of your advice is going to be more suitable to certain markets or harder to apply in certain markets. And I wouldn't hold you accountable for that, but I think that that thinking of you're literally every 5K you don't get off the price is 5K that's not going in your pocket. That's 5K you can't invest into another property down the line. So I think it just gave me a really different way to really start thinking about how to optimize that process. And there were a ton of things I'd learned from the course and from actually executing it, where I look back at my first few purchases and I cringe, because I'm literally like, by the time, even when I was buying my third one, I was like, hey, what does the conveyancer do? I know I need to get a conveyancer, but it just seems crazy. And so what I say is like, these are the biggest purchases you make. And as you say, like, it is a business. This isn't for fun. Like this, whether you want to think of it as side hustle, side business, whatever, there's serious money to be made. And if you want to do it really well, there's a lot of ways in the how that you can really optimize things.
Yeah, no, well said. And I just want to re-emphasize that point as well, that this is the business. I think when we were chatting before as well, like many times before, sometimes there's that tendency to kind of not keep on top of the maintenance costs. It's whatever, it's fine. But really, we should treat every cent that we spend in our property as a real cent. This is hard-earned money, doesn't come for free, and we need to treat it as a real business. So no, thank you so much, Dave. And maybe last one for me, maybe for people who are in your situation, or at least your situation a year ago, they've already got a portfolio, maybe they have some blue chip assets in Sydney, Melbourne, Brisbane, in a city. Of course, property is a very forgiving asset class, and even the worst decisions become good after 10 or 20 years. But no, yours have been good decisions. What is some advice, or maybe what's two pieces of advice that you've learned in the course that you can impart on someone who's kind of, has husband, wife, kids, they've already got a small portfolio, they want to expand that portfolio, but they've either been accidental investors or they've used buyer's agents before. They're just not really sure how to do it themselves. What are two bits that you can give them? Not so they don't have to do my course, but that, we can add value. This is kind of sales and marketing type of interview. Just how do we add value to the people?
I mean, I guess the two bits of advice is like, number one is like, you can do it. And number two is do it. I mean, I don't know if it's as simple as that, but but it's funny. I mean, it it's so interesting, you know, like I got fobbed off to, you know, I was amazed. Even some agents that I was calling directly were like, oh, I'm going to put you in touch with the buyer's agent who can help you here. I think this is, you know, I'm like, oh my God, like, I was like, no, I've done PK's course. I don't need to be doing this. So I think it's like, you know, I mean, there's my 2 bits of advice, but I think I think the real focus is on, it's just so important to educate yourself, and don't assume that just because you've done it before, that you know everything that there is to know about property investing, because I can guarantee that, you know, a lot of people, just like myself, there's no finger pointing here, but there's a lot of people that would have left some money on the table. And as I went through your course, I was like, oh my God, if I'd have done that, like when I bought my first few properties, well, firstly, 1 or 2 of them I wouldn't have bought, and I would have bought much better. And you know, there's some things I'm kicking myself about, but you know, you're never too old to learn. And I just think it's you know, knowledge is power, and anything that's, you know, these are the biggest investments that you're probably gonna make. And so the more you can educate yourself and optimize your investment strategy, the better you're going to do. It's as simple as that.
Yeah, no, well said. No, that's great. I mean, 2 pieces of advice: just do it, and you can do it. I think that's great. I heard somewhere someone did a YouTube video, and the biggest property mistake that people make is just not investing in property. Right. So
Well, there's that too. Yeah.
that's kind of, I like that psychology. You know, don't rush into it. Get free education before you pay for anything. But if you don't have time, like Dave said, you know, this isn't a thing where you pay me money and it's just a magic pill and all of a sudden you get results. You need to put some time and effort into it. We're not talking a part-time job, but you're still, you know, some hours into it. If you don't have that, then by all means use a buyer's agent. But I see so many people using a buyer's agent where actually they have 3, 4, 5 hours spare a week. They can do this themselves. They're just fearful. There's no need to be fearful. You can do it. And you're a testament, Dave. You're halfway around the world. You know, for most of this time, you've been locked down because of coronavirus. It's pretty been a heavy situation, but you've now got 2 additional properties which are growing, which aren't costing you an arm and a leg, and you know, setting yourself up for that long-term passive income outcome. So, yeah, like I said before we started hitting record as well, congratulations. And of course, keep in touch. Be always interested to see how it actually pans out. You know, the proof is always in the pudding. We'll see how these properties have performed after a year, 2 years, and stuff like that.
Thanks so much. Appreciate it.
All right, Dave, and thanks everyone for watching. If this video gave you any value at all, either from Dave or me, then hit the subscribe button on YouTube, turn the notification bell on, hit thumbs up, and that way the algorithm and YouTube will give it to more people. I just don't think that there's enough of these types of interviews. Of course, it's kind of very self-promoting from mine, but we just need to hear of everyday people's stories, and that's what gives people confidence to actually invest and take their portfolios to the next level. So thank you for watching, and my name's PK. Catch you later.